degrees from ASU. Nobody would hire me out of law school, so I started my own practice. For 10 years, I practiced criminal and family law, had some contracts. Then I wanted the public defender experience. So I went to the Maricopa County Legal Defender's Office and spent most of the next 20 years there. I took a couple of years off to raise a young child and also to have a coffee shop. I had a coffee shop for a few years, but always came back home to the Legal Defender's Office. And then I got appointed to the bench by presiding judge Joe Welty in Maricopa County in 2021, and I retired at the end of last year. And by the way, I also have an LLM from ASU in sports law and business. That's completely irrelevant to this topic, but I spent a lot of money on that degree, so I like to mention that. And there's me at my desk at OLD, another day at OLD. All right, so right now I'm teaching. I teach undergraduate legal studies for Purdue University Global, and I'm trying to teach the up-and-coming generation the importance of understanding the Constitution, why we have a Constitution, and why we follow it, and hopefully I'm giving them some good ideas for their future careers as legal professionals. So here's an overview of what we're going to talk about today. And by the way, interrupt as often as you like. Just raise your hand, shout out, whatever questions. I like to have kind of more of a discussion, kind of more of an interactive presentation rather than just lecture and save questions till the end. Because honestly, if I'm talking about something, by the end I will forget what I have said. So just ask me as we go. I don't mind the interruptions at all. And I talk fast because I drink a lot of coffee, so slow down in a minute here. Here's the overview. We're going to talk about the decision to apply for the bench, because I think that's a really key part of applying for the bench is actually the decision-making process, because it's a commitment. Hi, George. I'm so honored that you're here. Everybody know Judge Foster? Hi.
Yeah, I want to reapply.
I'm so honored that you're here. It's nice to see you. Judge Foster was on the bench in Maricopa County. You've been familiar with him for many, many years. And then he retired from the bench and came to the Legal Defender's Office. And you're still at the Legal Defender's Office?
Yes.
Yeah. You're supervisor for the juvenile department, right? Yeah. Wonderful judge. In fact, actually, I have a very funny, George, I have a very funny story. George, I have a very funny story that I'll tell you afterwards about my conversation with Judge Welty when he appointed me. Okay. That involves you.
Okay.
Okay. So
it's not scandalous. It's not scandalous.
It's not scandalous. Okay, so we'll talk about the decision-making process, and then I'll talk about the application process, the interview process, the waiting process when you get the phone call, getting ready once you've been appointed and you're waiting to actually start, and then some of the things that you need to know that I wish someone had told me about becoming a judicial officer and being a judicial officer. There are a number of materials on the website dealing with the application process. I do have the judicial application on the website and the materials. Some interview questions. There's always a list of questions that circulate when you apply for the bench that the commission asks you. So that list is in the materials. So if we don't get a chance to go over it, there are quite a few materials uploaded for you, as well as the PowerPoint. And George, don't hesitate to chime in on any of this, okay? All right, so rules for today. Any of you, is this your first APDA? Is there anybody here who is attending APDA for the first time? Okay, a couple of people. All right, so the rule is what happens at APDA stays at APDA. You probably figured that out already after a day. So let's have a very frank and open conversation. And again, don't hesitate to ask questions. I will never lie to you. Like I said, I may have to answer kind of off the record, but I will never lie to you, and I will be happy to answer any questions. So full disclaimer. See my unicorn here. You know, nothing in this presentation is meant to discourage anybody from applying for the bench. We need good people on the bench, and everybody in here is a wonderful lawyer with wonderful credentials and skills and communication abilities. And we need people, especially I'm biased from the defense bar on the bench. So I'm not trying to discourage anybody. If you think you want to apply, you should definitely go for it. I'm just telling you what I experienced and what I wish somebody, a colleague, a kind neighbor, somebody would have told me before I was on the bench. That would have made my time on the bench easier. All right, so it's time to play lawyer, not a lawyer. One of the things I like to do during my presentation is throw in a little trivia to keep kind of everybody awake and engaged. So we're gonna play lawyer, not a lawyer. I'm gonna show you a picture, you tell me who it is, and whether or not this person is a lawyer or not a lawyer. And there's no prizes. Who is this?
Not a lawyer. Not a lawyer.
No, but who is it?
Lennon.
It is, it's Lennon, thank you. Lennon, lawyer, not a lawyer.
Lawyer.
I hear lawyer, anybody think he was not a lawyer? He was a lawyer. That's all right, he was a lawyer. And of course, this is Lennon. He went to the law school at Kazan University, which is in Russia. He was actually expelled after 3 months, but does that surprise anybody? But at some point, he did, come on up. There's several seats up here. There's a couple over there. He was expelled after 3 months, but at some point he did get his law degree. And he moved to St. Petersburg, became a Marxist, and of course the rest literally is history, right? All right, first of all, the decision to apply for the bench. It's a really, really big decision. The first question you might ask yourself is, do I have what it takes? Or maybe you're telling yourself, I don't have what it takes. There's no way I could be a judge. I'm telling you, you do have what it takes. Every single person in this room has what it takes because of who you are today. If you are a public defender, you are already committed to public service and committed to justice, and you're probably in court most days, and you have excellent analytical skills. You have to be quick on your feet. You have good communication abilities because you deal with difficult people all the time. You have integrity, you have the ability to be fair, and you're probably pretty calm under pressure. So those are all really, really big qualities for the bench. So I would say, even without knowing most of you, you do have what it takes to be on the bench. So think about that. Also, talk to everybody you know. Talk to friends, talk to family, talk to maybe some colleagues that are on the bench, or a judge that you feel you can speak to privately about it. Talk to them, see what they say. Just be in the information gathering stage. Is this a lifelong dream? Have you always wanted to be a judge? Or have you just recently decided? These are just things to ask yourself. Are there judges telling you that you should be applying? I would say if there are judges telling you you should be applying, you should be applying. It sounds like you have a pretty good chance of getting on the bench. Is Ron Reinstein telling you to apply? If for those of you not familiar, Ron Reinstein was a very highly regarded criminal judge in Maricopa County for many, many years. And when he retired, he remained active and still remains active. I don't know how he does it. Working for the Supreme Court, the Arizona Supreme Court, in the administrative wing. He recruits judges. He does a lot of judicial training. He does judicial orientation. He's very, very active. So if you know Ron Reinstein and he's telling you to apply, that's like the golden ticket to the bench. So if you know Ron and he's telling you to apply, then you should definitely apply. If you don't know Ron, figure out a way to meet him. He talks at a lot of conferences, and he's a superb human being, and he still very much cares about the bench and who gets on the bench. You should be aware it's a really intense learning curve. I had practiced law over 30 years when I went on the bench. I didn't think there was anything else really to learn. I couldn't believe how much I had to learn. And I was very fortunate. I was appointed to the criminal bench. And so I at least didn't have to learn a whole other area of the law. When you get appointed to the bench, you don't have any control over where they put you. So you may have, you're a practicing criminal defense attorney, they may put you on the family law bench. They may put you on the probate bench. They may put you somewhere you don't have a clue. Maybe you took a class in law school on probate, but you don't really know anything about it. You don't have any control over that. So not only are you gonna have to learn to be a judge, you're gonna have to learn perhaps a whole new area of the law. just something to think about. Stephen?
So once you're confirmed that you've gotten applied to the bench, how long does it take for them to determine what judge they want you to be?
We'll get to that.
Okay.
Thank you. We will get to that. I'm trying to get to all of those little practical questions, but that's a good question. Do you still love to practice law? Do you still love to practice law? If you still have that passion for being a defense attorney, maybe you're not ready to be a judge. I was ready for a new challenge. I wasn't quite ready to retire. There's seats up here. There's a few seats up here. There's one up here. You know, I was ready for a new challenge. I wasn't quite ready to retire. But I did need to do something different. And so that's a question you should be asking yourself. Hey, do I still enjoy coming to work every day doing this? Or do I need a new challenge? The timing is very important for you and your family. Talk to family. Is the timing good? Are your kids away at college? Are your, you know, do you have little kids? What, you know, what's the timing look like for you and the people that you care about? And, you know, ask yourself, do I really want to do this? Is this something that I really, really want to do?
Is the timing, like as far as how many hours a day you spend like working?
I'm
is
getting
that part
to
of your
that.
presentation? Okay.
I'm getting to that, yes. It is obviously a huge time commitment. But if, you know, as hopefully you all know by now, right, everybody's an adult. If you love what you do, it doesn't matter, right? So think about this. Is this what really appeals to me? The reason I didn't apply for so many years was because I really love working at the legal defender's office. And to me, becoming a judge was just like another bureaucratic job, you know, like just another bureaucratic job of accounting. And if I was gonna be a county employee, I may as well just stay at the legal defender's office, which is a fabulous place to work. And so for me, you know, I'm sort of the anti-bureaucrat, right? I've fought against the government my whole career. I wasn't sure I wanted to be part of the problem. So just, you know, so ask yourself that. Don't let anybody pressure you. It's not something you should be pressured into. All right. I just like this picture of the teddy bear in the judge's outfit. So, because I want to talk about the pros of becoming a judge. And there are many. And when I say judge, I also mean commissioner or any type of magistrate, judicial position. You get your own gavel. When you get sworn in, you get a gavel with your name on it and the date that you're sworn in. And you know, it's something nice to have when you're on the bench. And then now that I'm retired, it's in a box in the garage, and my kids can throw it out when I die. But it's kind of cool. So that's one.
Have you ever used it?
I didn't use it.
Not
I
even
didn't
once?
use it because
Not
in
even
my
once?
courtroom, it was the courtroom assistant who, you know, hit the gavel. Some people keep it on the bench with them. I don't know. I just stayed in a box in my office. Steven?
If you were in a bigger courtroom, would you ever consider using it, or would you have considered using it?
Maybe. Yeah, maybe. But anyway, so that's, you know, kind of a nice little thing. Now, all kidding aside, obviously, even now and still, being a judicial officer carries with it a great deal of prestige and status and respect in our society. And you can, you know, raise the bar, and you can be one of those judges who has a very good reputation, who promotes justice and respect in the system. You can do that. You can do that. And, you know, that's pretty cool, the prestige and the respect, especially after years and years of being a public defender and everybody kind of hated you and dissing you, right? Your clients hate you, the judges hate you, the prosecutors really hate you, the public hates you because you represent all the scumbags in the world. So it's kind of nice to become a judicial officer and have people say your honor, and like they have to be nice to you, you get your own bathroom, you know. So, you know, it's kind of nice. It's kind of a nice transition from this line of work to that. That wears off kind of fast, but hearing your honor never gets old, right? Your honor never gets old.
Oh, in fact, when on our streaming services, I'll usually refer to her as commissioner.
Yeah, it never gets old.
That's her profile name.
So, you know, you don't want to be this, right?
No.
And I can't tell you how many people said to me, "Oh, you're like Judge Judy." No, No. Judge Judy is not a real judge. I mean, she's a real judge, but she's not a real judge. She's a TV judge. And no judge should ever act the way this one acts.
I think she's hilarious.
No, but it's television, right? So, again, this was my experience. The professional respect that I started getting when I was appointed to the bench really motivated me to try and be a leader, to try and show by example how a person should act, how, you know, Dana right here. There's a seat here, ma'am. There's a couple seats back over there. There's a seat right up here. It's like oh shit, I'm in a position of, you know, some power. People look up to me. What I say matters. That was the first time in my career that had ever happened because I had been a public defender. No one ever listened to me as a public defender. But, you know, my younger staff, people really looked up to me, and it really motivated me to take it seriously and to teach and to mentor the staff how to, you know, act professionally and to be a good legal professional. So think about, you know, what kind of judge you want to be. Hopefully everybody wants to be an honest, fair, and hardworking judge, but not everybody is. And if you are honest, fair, and hardworking, you get very, very frustrated very quickly by your colleagues who are doing just enough to get by. And there are lots of those. Aaron?
Well, you just answered it at the very end. So candidly, just like there's a range of work ethic among lawyers, candidly, there is a work ethic spectrum among judicial officers. And for the judges who are just doing enough to get by, does that mean, say, that they are not spending a lot of time on motions? What does that phrase look like from the point of view of the bench, to just do enough to get by?
Not preparing
I see.
to go out on the bench, not reading files ahead of time, not looking at emails, not, you know, in Maricopa County. Do you practice Maricopa County?
I do.
So, you know, everything is pretty much paperless now. There's a tremendous amount of electronic documentation that you have to review. You know, in my position, I was on the probation violation court. I had warrants, I had to sign every single day in our electronic queue. Some of the judges have other documents to file or to sign in the EQ, motions, etc. You know, they let their EQ go where you have to really work on it every day so you don't get behind. I mean, we all have practice in front of judges who are way behind. You know, you file a motion to continue like 2 weeks in advance, and you're calling the JA, you're emailing the JA, hey, I need an answer on this motion to continue that I filed 2 weeks ago. That sort of thing. You know, complacency is everywhere, right? It's not just in the world, it can also be on the bench. And honestly, I was very disappointed by that because I took the job very seriously and felt like I was there to do not just a job, but really a duty. It's a duty, and it's disappointing to see colleagues that don't take it as seriously. But, you know, do you want to be that kind of judge? I hope not. Yeah.
How much of that falls on like judicial assistants and the staff for, you know, providing their judge with the documents that are coming in or the emails on like asking for updates on, you know, a motion?
Have you ever worked with a secretary that wasn't very good at his or her job?
Yes, and I've worked with, you know,
And you
trying
worked
to
with good
reach
secretaries.
JAs or whatever, you know, trying to ask those questions, and it feels like a lot of it is the staff.
Two problems. Two problems. Again, my remarks, I've only practiced in Maricopa County. So your situation in your county, if you're in a smaller county, it might be different. Staffing issues are everywhere, and you can have the best secretary, the best judicial assistant in the world who is right on top of things and very responsive. I try to encourage that culture in my court. You know, I would, you know, a lot of the people that they hire at the court are very young. Some of them are entry level. They hire entry level staff at the court that in jobs that really should not be entry level. But they do hire a lot of people that have bachelor's degrees in criminal justice or something, so they're at least interested in the assignment. And then you just have to work, and that's one of the things I'll get to about being a judicial officer. is you have to train them, and you have to tell them what you want, and you have to tell them, because they don't know, you're part of the training process, because their training process is more administrative and bureaucratic. You need to train them. Hey, the most important thing is if an order of release comes to my desk, you sit it in front of me until I sign it, and you get it to the jail, you get that person released. And the next thing is, answering the phone, and the next thing is responding to lawyers' emails, and the next thing is, and you hammer it into them what the process is. Now, it's often a revolving door. You may have noticed that, at least in Maricopa County, JAs come and go, especially for the commissioners. They move them around the court all the time. There's this culture of the next job in Maricopa County, and it's usually the commissioners that get the short end of the stick. A lot of the judges have had the same staff for many years. You don't usually see that with the commissioners. There is a culture of there's this culture of, commissioners are less than in Maricopa County. And I'll be very honest about that. I was shocked. I was really shocked. And you have all of these bureaucratic people and all these levels of supervisors, and everybody's always moving around. And there's not only this culture of, let's apply for the next job. They're encouraged to apply for the next job. I had a supervisor, and I should say, commissioners don't, and commissioners do not hire or fire their staff. There's no control over your staff. Court admin.
Do the
does
superior
this.
court judges have that power?
Well, I was getting to that. So the judges, and to some extent the commissioners, have control over the JA, the judicial assistant, who they hire. But you're not really involved in the hiring process. HR picks who they want to interview, and then they say, we've picked these 4 or 5 people, and which ones do you like and you want to interview? Well, you don't have time to interview people. You just don't. I tried to make time to interview people because it's so important, but it's sort of treated like just an administrative job. And so the problem is that you are undermined. If there is a problem, staff doesn't usually come to you. They go to their supervisor. And so there's this constant tension and triangulation between the supervisor of the staff, and we had a terrible one in probation, and then the staff person. You do something that they don't like, or they don't think you should be doing, or they're not sure. They go to the supervisor, and the person who is law trained, who can tell them what the right thing is to do. You got a question?
It was going to be about, do you get to select the staff for your own division?
Yeah, not really. And you get lip service. Don't you want to say something?
Yeah, I was gonna say that when I started, right after Moses handed down the tablets, commissioners were able to to interview and hire their own staff. And if you were coming on normally when somebody was retiring or got fired, and there's usually somebody's former JA floating around that, if they're good and they got a good reputation, you can't hire. Judges, on the other hand, have more ability to hire their own JAs and bailiffs. And I had my JA for 16 years, bailiff for 18 years. And but I always told them, if there's something else that you want to do, you feel you've had enough, feel free to go, because I'm not going to stop you. We'll try to find somebody else. But it is an administrative nightmare for commissioners these days, trying to get good staff and people that you can get along.
Thank you for that, George. Yeah, you may be, and as a sidebar, if you are in front of a judge who's fortunate enough to have a long-term, really good JA, be really nice to them. Be really, make it, create a relationship with them. I was on the bench 3.5 years. I had 3 or 4 JAs in 3.5 years. We train somebody, and then they'd be encouraged to apply for another job. And I just never understood that. I mean, the supervisor would undermine us commissioners and tell our JAs, oh, you're good, you should apply for this other job. Well, you've only been a JA 6 months. You don't know shit. So it's hard, but it is a revolving door, and you just have to do the best you can contacting them. Some are better than others, and I know how really frustrating it is. And as a lawyer, there really isn't shit you can do about it if you have a JA that's not communicating. Yes, ma'am.
Is there a pay disparity?
For commissioners and judges?
No, I know there is for them, but for support staff for commissioners versus the staff for judges?
I don't know the answer to that. I don't think so. A JA I think a JA is just a JA as far as salary. Yeah. Yeah. The key is to find someone that wants to stay, that is encouraged to stay, that you can train and work with and mentor, and that's hard to find. It's hard to find. Yes, sir.
Did you find that you wound up, when you had a bad staff in front of you, having to basically do the staff's job?
No, because it's not like practicing where, you have a crappy secretary that doesn't know how to file things, so you do it yourself. I would have gladly done that, but the jobs are set up in a way to where you just don't know how to do their job. You just don't know how, and you don't have time to learn, and you're not supposed to. So I found it very frustrating. I've been a sole practitioner for 10 years. I knew how to, change the toner in the copier machine, right? I knew how to do everything. And to have to rely on people, some were very good. Some of the, don't get me wrong, some of the court staff are very, very dedicated. Some are not, just like anywhere else. It just adds to the stress level for you as a judicial officer. And again, so you can be a leader by example, and it's a nice opportunity to be able to do that. It can also be very, very rewarding. Judges still hold a place of esteem in our society. You can work with the community. You can promote fairness and equality within the system. You can be one of the good judges, and you have the opportunity to engage with the community, and you can promote this understanding of justice and an understanding of the Constitution, understanding of what our system means. And let's be honest, there are opportunities for career advancement. If you are so desirous, you can apply for higher bench positions. After you leave the bench, you can be an esteemed legal advisor, you can teach, you can become a counsel, you can open a specialized practice. There's definitely life after the bench, if you so desire. And you get to be in the team photo. I'm the one with the snarky look on my face. So you get to be one of a million in a black robe. All right, so lawyer, not a lawyer. Who is this?
Andrea Bocelli?
Yes, it's Andrea Bocelli. Lawyer, not a lawyer.
Not a
Look a lawyer, just be
He's a lawyer.
Whoa.
And not only is he a lawyer, he was court appointed attorney for a while.
Does he say
Yeah,
reason?
he went to the University of Pisa Law School in Italy, and he actually was court appointed attorney for about a year after he graduated. And then he found obviously a much better career. All right, who's this guy? Lawyer, not a lawyer. Fidel Castro. What do you think? Lawyer, not a lawyer?
Baseball player.
Yeah. Who said he's a lawyer? He is. He was a lawyer. He was a lawyer.
She missed it.
And he studied at the University of Havana. He got admitted to the bar in 1950. He even had his own law firm for a while before he got into politics. I thought that was very interesting. All right, so here are some of the cons of becoming a judge.
Get to where that.
It is incredibly stressful. I know you all know what stress is now. And you probably think there's no way I could be more stressed. Probably think there's no way I could be more stressed than I am right now. Let me tell you, you can be more stressed than you are right now. Because even though you may have all these things now, you may have an insane, well, I know you have an insane calendar, you have an insane caseload, you have all kinds of shit you have to do when you're not in court, and there may be politicking in your office. It is 1,000 times worse on the bench. Because not only do you have an insane calendar and a caseload over which you have no control, and You may be working in an area you know nothing about. Hopefully you get up to speed very quickly. You have all these administrative things going on in the back of the house is what I call it. In the back of the house, when you're not on the bench, you have all this incredible amount of administrative work, and I'll go over some of that in more detail. So being on the bench is only half the job. And if you have a terrible staff, that makes it very difficult. But even if you have a great staff, while you're on the bench, you know that your judicial assistant is in the back waiting for you to sign, 50 stipulations or 50 warrants or motions for release. And it is all electronic now here in Hooper County, so most of this is done. I didn't do this unless I was waiting for a lawyer to show up in court or something, but a lot of judges, I think George can attest to this, not that George did this, will sit up there and do other work while they're supposed to be listening to what's going on. And I'm sure it happens. I didn't do it, but there's so much work that it is tempting to sit up there and do that if you're not interested in what the parties have to say. I won't ask you, but I'm sure you didn't do it.
No, I was too afraid of being reversed.
Huh? What'd you say?
I was too afraid of being reversed, so I tried to be.
Well, because you were one of the good ones. You were one of the good ones. And I'm not casting any dispersions on anyone in particular. We all know that sometimes when we're in front of a judge, we kind of feel like they're not paying attention. I'm just saying. All right, and then of course there's tremendous politics. Steve?
What about stressing your voice? Like you're talking on the bench so much to where your throat just vanishes?
That's a great point. So, I had the probation violations calendar. I had many days where I had 90 to 100 matters a day, 5 days a week I was on the bench. And there were times I lost my voice, lots of sore throats. I was able to train my voice. I had to do voice exercises at night, and I started drinking a lot of peppermint tea and keeping cough drops with me, and my voice grew stronger. But there is a physical aspect to it that it can take a real physical toll on you. Now, I was older, but you're exhausted, you're stressed, and you're talking all day. You have to stay hydrated. You have to eat a lot of protein. I had to change my diet. I was, like a coffee and juice person, in the morning until lunchtime. I had to start eating like eggs and steak for breakfast because you need a big protein hit before you go on the bench. So it does take a physical toll also. Yes, sir.
You may have already addressed this, but what would be a couple examples of the administrative work?
I'm gonna get to that. I have a whole list of things in just 1 minute. But your questions are good and I enjoy them. If for some reason we don't get to them, there's a bunch listed in the materials.
Have
Some
a
examples.
thermos.
Go ahead, Steve.
Have a thermos.
Yeah, yes, a warm cup of tea on the bench is definitely advisable, that you can plug in and keep it warm for the 2 or 3 hours that you're up there. Crying on the bench, there's no crying in baseball, but there's a lot of crying on the bench. Most of my crying was done in the car on the way home, but sometimes you do break down on the bench. It happened to me once. I will tell you about that in 1 second. Let me just hit some points here. You've got administrators that are directing what you're supposed to be doing off the bench, and they don't know what you do. They don't understand the process. They're all about crunching numbers, and it's frustrating. It's professionally frustrating, especially coming from the public defense bar. You feel like the eye on the prize, right, is the defendants, the litigants, and sight, I think, is lost by a lot of administrative types. They're numbers and not people, where to you, they're people. Hopefully to you, they're people with real litigants with real problems and not just, cases that you have to process.
Can you explain what you mean by number crunching? Like, what were they on you about for numbers?
Caseloads, getting things to trial, denying continuances, things that I'm sure is not really a surprise to most of you. Yeah. You have to train in areas you don't know anything about. I've already touched on that. That can be very, very stressful. And of course, difficult litigants. And you're used to difficult clients. But I had, 100 of them in a day. It's in some ways now you can sort of control, like if you have a really difficult client, a particularly difficult client, you can sort of say, well, you know what, I don't feel like going to see him at the jail today, I'll go tomorrow. You don't have that control on the bench. You are dealing with, 50 to 100 crazy, difficult people all day, every day, and you have to sit there, and you can't, there's not really a break. You don't have the autonomy that you do when you aren't in practice. So I do want to share this one story, and really this should have gone under the pros of being on the bench. I had an amazing experience where I had an older black gentleman who was in my court for probation violation. And he was on probation for some minor felony offense. And, his big crime was that he didn't, call his probation officer or whatever. And there was a gentleman in the courtroom who knew this man very, very well. An older white gentleman who came up to speak on his behalf. And he had met this gentleman outside the homeless shelter or something like that. And this man was not a business owner. He was not a community activist or anything like that. He was just a guy that happened to live in the neighborhood of this homeless shelter. And he found this man in a wheelchair, and he decided to help him, just help him out of the kindness of his heart. He gave him a job. He gave him food and shelter until he was able to, he helped him get benefits so that he could get his own place. I mean, this man had totally been this older gentleman's guardian angel. And this man, who clearly was not particularly well educated, was so articulate in the way he talked about just wanting to help another human being. It totally floored me. I still get chills thinking about it. It totally floored me that there are still human beings like that. And I started to cry because I just couldn't believe there was a human being willing to do this. The whole courtroom was silent. You could hear a pin drop when this guy spoke. And I thanked him for, first of all, I said, you not only made my day, but I think you've made my career, because I am so moved to hear somebody just out of the kindness of their heart doing something for a complete stranger. And they had a beautiful relationship. They hugged up the podium, and I had to go off the record for a minute. I was so moved to tears, literally, by the kindness and the humanity of this person. And so it's kind of those moments that sort of make it worth it. I wouldn't have had that experience had I not been on the bench.
And then did you violate him?
I did not. Or, I did not. I released him. So you can do wonderful things on the bench and see wonderful things. So I'll leave it at that. But I did cry a lot at first. I left this wonderful job at the legal defender's office, and I drove home every day the first 2 weeks crying, thinking, what the hell am I doing? I had a nice job, I was making a decent living, I could stay at the legal defender's office till I was 90. What the hell was I thinking? But I got over that fast, because it was quite overwhelming for me at first. The time commitment, tremendous. You have to have tremendous attention to detail. You really have to be sharp. The time commitment is huge. I do know a lot of JOs who take work home. I did not take work home, mainly because I just made myself be as efficient as possible for 8 hours a day. I was being paid 8 hours a day. I didn't want to have to take work home, so I got in at 7 every morning, prepared for my day, stayed until 4 or 5 every day, preparing for the next day, getting caught up on warrants and motions and all that sort of stuff. You have to be dependent on staff. Sometimes the staff is good, sometimes the staff is less good, but it is a huge time commitment. And I do, in particular, the judges and commissioners on the civil bench or the family court bench have to take work home to look at discovery and that sort of thing. So I didn't do that, but my calendar was a one and done sort of calendar, so I didn't have to do that. But understand it is a huge, you think you're working hard now, and you are. This is harder. There's a lot of public scrutiny. You have to be very aware of public opinion now that you're a judge, how does what I do look? There was a clear underlying message from the presiding judge, like, don't embarrass us, right? If you live in a county where judges are elected, you have to worry about running for re-election, and then running for re-election. And if you're in a county that's appointed, you have to worry about retention elections, which is every 4 years, which is kind of the downside of being a judge. You don't have to worry about that as a commissioner. Yes, sir?
Quick question, what about the 3 a.m. duties? Like, I need a warrant, cops calling you in the middle of the night.
Oh, initial appearance court.
Oh.
Like an initial appearance court tends to do those warrants. You could be assigned to initial appearance court and have to work in the middle of the night. Yes.
Okay, so it
Good
goes
question.
beyond the 9 to 5.
You have no control over that, and Judge Welty, who was the presiding judge, who has now left, makes those decisions. It's Pam Gates now, is the presiding judge, Judge Gates, and they decide where to put people. And they often put brand new people in IA court, and yes, it might be an overnight shift. So it's something to consider, you know. Yeah, no.
For don't embarrass us, in other words, in your personal life, in your personal morality, is that what it means?
Period.
Period.
Don't send out emails that might look bad. Don't, walk straight,
Gotcha.
you know. And it's not like anybody says this, but it's clearly the undertone. And I don't disagree with that. I mean, judges should know how to act, right? If you're a commissioner, you serve at the pleasure of the presiding judge, you can be fired. You can be fired, and some people do get fired. Yes, ma'am.
Can you tell us more about that?
I didn't get fired, although.
Well, what are some, cause it's as at-will employment, so if people have been fired, what have they been fired for? How often does that happen?
When I was on the bench, I served 3.5 years. There was one person who got fired. So it's not common. My understanding was that, and I will not say her name, but my understanding was that there were certain instances where she had actually not been following the law. And she had been warned and warned again. And she continued to do what she thought was right. And this was not her area of the law. She'd come from a different area to be on the bench in a different area that she was familiar with. And she did what she thought was right as opposed to following the law. And that's sort of the official word. If that's true, then she probably should have been fired, right? The judges have to follow the law. And there were times I had to agree with the prosecutor sometimes, that was hard at first, but you do have to follow the law. And so that was my understanding of that. Now, years ago, way before y'all were born probably, there was a presiding judge when he came in. There were only a handful of commissioners in Maricopa County. Now there's 50 or 75. But back then there were like 5 or 6 commissioners. I'm talking like 30 years ago. And a new presiding judge came in and fired all of them. And I know this because one of them was a very good friend of mine who, when she was fired, came in and became my partner in my practice. So he just didn't like any of these people and he just fired them. So I hope that doesn't happen anymore. But obviously, if you're not following the law, you probably shouldn't be on the bench.
There was a commissioner in EDC a little bit before I went over to work in EDC where I am now, who was fired because she was yelling at victim and victim advocate were like trying to announce on a case and share, their position, and she was yelling at them like, sit down, I'm not hearing from you. So that's just another example.
And yes, we know who you're talking about. Yes, and I'm glad you brought that up because my understanding is that she had been warned about certain behaviors. And
treating people with respect, essentially.
Certain behaviors, yes. And that was not an isolated incident. And she was allowed to retire, is my understanding.
Okay.
She was able to retire, she was allowed to retire, so she retired. But yes, that's another good example. Yes, ma'am.
So how does the presiding, for example, learn about like the about it? Is it just like are practitioners somehow letting the presiding know? Is it just like talk of the town? Like, 'cause I know there are times where I'm like, this is literally not the law, and the prosecutor would agree. I wish I could go and talk to them and be like, you can't do that.
All of the above, like how, I don't know if you heard the question, how does the presiding judge find out the judge is not following, or commissioner is not following the laws? All of the above. Each section has a presiding judge. So there's a presiding criminal judge, a presiding juvenile judge, and they watch, they watch the commissioners. They watch you, monitor you, and make sure you're doing what you're supposed to be doing. I'm sure people complain. Yes, ma'am.
Outside of, not following the law like the example you gave, how much oversight is there into the decision making? Like how much flexibility, control, autonomy do the judges have, or commissioners have in terms of?
Nobody told me what decisions to make. In case you haven't gathered this, I am one to ask for forgiveness and not permission. I did take following the law very seriously. Like I said, much to my dismay, I actually had to rule for the state once in a while. I had to put people in jail once in a while. I had to put people in prison once in a while. At first, that was very hard for me, but that is, that's something else you have to think about. If you're applying for the bench, you might have to put people in prison. Kind of goes against our grain, doesn't it? But you have to follow the law more than anything else. So nobody told me how to rule, but you're given certain tasks in the court where you don't have a choice but to handle these tasks in a certain manner. It's not really a discretionary thing, it's more of a practical thing. So there's a lot of that makes it easy to know. Let me do a time check.
Yes, it is 9:05.
9:05, okay, so we have like another 30, 40 minutes. Okay, good.
What about crazy people?
Let's not use that.
Litigants or administrators.
Or lawyers.
Legally violating, somebody upset that you put them in jail, victim upset that you let somebody off, people following you home,
Yeah.
knowing where you live,
Yeah.
that kind of stuff?
Yeah,
Can you speak on that?
yeah, I was getting to that. That's actually, if we get to it.
I didn't see any more negatives.
Yeah, no, there's a whole section on what happens after you're on the bench.
Okay.
I can address that really quickly though. You already deal with difficult people. You are masters at dealing with difficult people. You deal with difficult people every single day. Just multiply it by 1,000. That's why I personally think that being a defense attorney is great preparation for the bench, no matter what assignment you get, because you've already dealt with a heavy caseload and really crappy people, right? And people who behave badly. And you have to learn very quickly how to control it. And we all know judicial officers who control our courtrooms and those who don't. And that was probably the hardest thing for me to learn. It's a 3-ring circus. My courtroom, for people, lovely people here who practiced in my courtroom, who can tell you, it was a 3-ring circus most of the time. And I think I did okay. I think I controlled it okay. You've got the chain. If you're fortunate, you have deputies assigned that are really good. And for the most part, we have really good deputies. You have the litigants, the lawyers, who for the most part, I was lucky, I had the same people in my court every day, and for the most part, they were very, very good. 1 or 2 of them were out of control, but we'll get to that later. And then you have the, the gallery sometimes gets crazy, right? And you have to learn to control it. And it's not an easy task. It takes some practice. You have to rely on the deputies often. I learned to give people really good dirty looks. And if you're a parent, you already know how to do that. Yes, ma'am.
Always wondered, do judges have favorite attorneys?
Oh, yeah. Some of my favorites are right here. Oh, I didn't talk about that. Okay, so there's an age limit for a judge. If you're thinking about applying to be a judge, don't wait too long, because you have to be over 30 but under 65 to apply for the bench, and at 70 you have to retire, and that's in the state constitution. There are no age limits for commissioners. My understanding for municipal court people, the age out at 75. And what if I don't like it? You have to think about what's next. Some people practice some more, some people, like I, just decided to just cash everything in and retire, because you may not like it. You may not like it. See,
How soon in advance do you need to plan your retirement before the day of your retirement?
start today. If you don't have a 401k, start now.
Don't have a 401k? Start today.
Yeah, start today. All right, if you're on the state retirement system, good, stay there.
Commissioners are ASRS, right?
I was able, yes, I was able to take my ASRS with me.
Oh, okay.
But they give you an option if you're a commissioner, again, in Maricopa County, if you're already on ASRS, you can stay and keep it the same. That's what I chose to do. Where there's the elected officials retirement that I don't know a lot about. George, maybe you can speak to that a little bit?
That's not available to anyone anymore.
Oh, okay.
If you are not, haven't been a judge as of 10 years ago at least, they closed that retirement package, and a good population here in the state of Arizona is funding it under the general fund until we all die.
Okay, but you have to be on the bench 20 years or something like that? for
At that time, you had to be on the bench 20 years to
Okay.
retire, and then when you retired, you got 80% of your salary for the rest of your life.
And now it's just if you're either part of the ASRS or you're not?
If you were in what we call EOR, you're still in EOR. If you are a judge now, I think there's only 2 judges left that are in EOR that are on the bench currently. Everybody else is pretty much on the 401k. That's some-
Open 401k. The county has the 401k deferred comp plan nationwide. It's wonderful. Get into it.
Is that true with Superior Court as well, the nationwide plan?
Well, I was able to take, I kept it.
Oh, okay.
I don't really know. Do you know? Is the deferred
Yeah.
comp available to commissioners?
All Maricopa County employees are eligible to join that.
Okay. Yeah.
So, if you have a 401k with the county, is it secure? Is it safe?
So far.
Okay.
It's as safe as anything. Yes, ma'am.
When you're dealing with the presiding judges and other judges, are they mentoring, are they helpful, or is it like swimming with the sharks?
Some are helpful. Some are helpful. You have to learn who your friends are. It's not everybody.
Does your training cover all that, like e-filing text stuff?
No, well, no. I mean, I was thrown in there. I was just thrown in there. Depending on who your presiding judges, they may provide more training for you. I was fortunate that the software is the same in Maricopa County. So I just had to learn, I already knew the software from being at the county. I just had to learn the judicial side of it, signing orders electronically and that sort of thing. But I was already familiar with the software. Learning software is another issue. So if you're still interested in applying for the bench, who's this? And was he a lawyer or not a lawyer? Anybody know who this is? Dina, you know who this is. George knows who this is. George, you know who this is.
God, that goes back to the 50s.
I know. This is Ozzie Nelson of Ozzie and Harriet fame. Very famous TV show in the 50s and 60s, and kind of the first dad of television, right? The first nice dad. We can't use Cosby anymore as an example, but he was, the first. Anyway, so he actually, I was surprised to learn, he actually was a lawyer also, and he couldn't find a job because it was the Great Depression. He couldn't find a job as a lawyer, so he went into the entertainment industry and then became very, very successful. Some of you may be familiar with Ricky and David Nelson, who were singers for a long, long time. Those are his sons. All right, so let's talk about the application process. I'm gonna speed up just a little bit. I know everybody has lots of questions. I can stay afterwards as long as possible, but I do wanna get through some other stuff. The application process. If there's a judicial application in your material, so you can see what it looks like. The commissioner application sort of changes with each round of applications. Maricopa County usually recruits about once a year. And if you are interested, you can watch for recruitment on the Arizona Supreme Court website. There's the link. They have a link that tells you all of the judicial openings throughout the state. be a judge, you have to be over 30 and under 65. You have to be in practice for at least 5 years and a resident of Arizona for at least 5 years, and that's pretty much the qualifications. It's paperless now, so you can do everything online. You can submit, no more do you have to make 10 copies of everything and submit it. It's all online. Make sure you're applying to the right position, and this website will give you those specific applications for those specific counties. It is an excruciatingly long application, very much like the bar application. Currently, it's 19 pages. So, make sure you allow yourself plenty of time. Don't wait until the deadline to submit it or to fill it out. You want to be as thorough as possible. You'll need a whole bunch of references, at least 3 judicial officers, 3 personal friends, 3 opponents and adversaries. It might be hard to find 3 adversaries that'll say nice things about you. If you're thinking about this whole process, start on it now, because you will have to list some adversaries. Make sure you have current contact information for these people because they will be contacted. The Judicial Commission and the nominating committees, they all do their due diligence. So you want to make sure that the contact information you give is good and that it's not a dead end for whoever is contacting that person. The scuttlebutt is always running, how many reference letters do I need? How many emails should be sent to the commission? Usually the person who's applying will reach out to you and say, hey, can you send a letter to the commission? Here's the email, here are the commissioners, or the people on the committee. I personally had, I think, 5 or 6 really good ones. I don't think necessarily more is better. I don't know that they made all of them. But if you can have a handful of really, really good ones, I think that's the key. I don't think there's a magic number.
Can I say something about that?
Please. Please.
It's good not to bombard them with like 25 or 30 letters. And they'll tell, a lot of people will tell you that. Because it's not that kind of popularity contest. When I got appointed, Governor Napolitano said to me, you know a lot of important people. And I said, I'm lucky. There wasn't that many. And it really makes a difference, like you said. It's quality over quantity. It's going to really turn the page for you.
All right, thank you, George. It's every job you've ever had, every address you've ever lived at. It's quite time consuming. You'll have to probably do some research, honestly, on past jobs when you work, especially when you're older. Shit, I don't know where I worked when I was 25, right? I had to look it up. So, but you do want to be as thorough as possible. And the application process for judge, if you're not familiar, if you live in Maricopa, Pima, Pinellas, Coconino, you're appointed by the judge, and other counties elect judges. And we won't talk about judicial elections because I don't really know anything about it. When you apply for commissioner, this is something I didn't know. The list of applicants is circulated amongst all of the judicial officers in that county. So everybody knows who's applying, and input is requested. Hey, has this person ever applied or appeared in front of you? What do you think? They've applied. So, so no matter how far you get in the process, your name goes around to all the judges and commissioners in your county to comment. And you are appointed by the presiding judge in your county. It starts at HR for the commissioner. Again, the list of applicants circulates with the other judicial officers. They usually select around 15 people to interview. You interview with the commissioner nominating committee. I only had 4 people that interviewed me. I've had colleagues tell me they had a dozen people interview them for this process. I was also interviewed during COVID and it was virtual, so that may have had something to do with it. So, and the process changes all the time, so it's hard to know how many people you interview in front of. And then if you make the list after you have your interview and you make the list, you're in. Because Maricopa County creates a list of several people from which to plug in throughout the year. So if you're on the list, you're in. It's just a question of when you're appointed, when someone retires, when someone gets fired, when someone leaves for another job. So once you're on the list, you're in. You meet with the presiding judge kind of as a rubber stamp to just make sure that you are, you don't have two heads and don't say anything stupid, and you won't say anything stupid. But someone said that to me before I went in for my interview, don't say anything stupid, and I thought, that's good advice. And you won't say anything stupid, but you'll be nervous, and you may say something that you regret later. So just, just be cautious, and then you just wait to hear if you've been appointed. Here's the link for the Maricopa County Commissioner recruitments. Yes, sir.
Let's say you make the list and it's a relatively slow year for commissioners. Do you have to then reapply at the next recruitment, or does your name
Yes.
exist until the?
No, you have to reapply. Even if you're on the list, you have to reapply if a new recruitment comes out.
Okay.
Yes. And I use this because this is the website they use for commissioner recruitments. Many of you probably know Rodney Mitchell. Rodney is a longtime public defender, wonderful colleague. He was down in probation violation court with me. And he was a pleasure, both off the bench and on. But that's the website. So the application for judge, the Judicial Nominating Commission reviews all of the applications. Again, for these counties, they are appointed, they accept periods of public comment, then they make recommendations to the governor depending on how many openings there are. I don't think there's a set number, they usually send a handful of names to the governor interviews those people, and then the governor decides who to appoint. Now's a good time if you're a Democrat, because you do have to list your party affiliation for judge, not for commissioner, but for judge. And now it's a good time if you're a Democrat. Commissioner Hobbs has appointed, I don't know if she's appointed any Republicans, but I know she's appointed a lot of Democrats, and she's appointed a lot of people who are already sitting commissioners as judges. That's not always the case. So it's really dependent on who the judges, or the commissioner, or the governor is. If the governor comes in, check them out. It might be a good time to apply for judge, depending on who the governor is, or if you have any connections to the governor's office. There's also, if you're not sure, if you're already working for government agency, you can't pro tem, but if you're a private attorney and you want to pro tem, there are the websites to apply. It is volunteer, but it kind of can give you a little taste, maybe. You want to see if you want to do it. If you want to pro tem, you can, and they don't necessarily appoint you. You're already a pro tem, but it's something to do if you think you might like to be on the bench. There's the website for all the court vacancies again in the state. You can get involved in a Supreme Court committee or commission if you don't know anybody. This is a good place to start making connections with people and meeting people and learning who's who and getting references. This is what I wrote. They always ask you, why do you want to be a commissioner? Why do you want to be a judge? Why do you want to be on the bench? And I thought I would never get appointed, so I was 61 years old. And so I was really honest. And I said, I've been practicing a long time. I've seen a lot, George is gone, so I can say this now. I've seen a lot of shitty judges. I put this right in my seat. I've seen judges, they're late, they're unprepared, they're not engaged, they don't give a shit. I want to be better than that, and I think I can raise the bar. Well, like I said, I figured, who the hell reads this, right? Well, I found out when I interviewed with Judge Welty, the presiding judge, he said, I always read this portion first on an application. I always look at this to see what a person says, because I'm really curious. Do they speak from the heart, or do they give me some bullshit about public service? And I was kind of embarrassed, and he said, this is the best one I've ever read. He said, this woman is so honest, she thinks she can raise the bar. And so, you never know. So my point is, take time to write this, and write it from the heart, and don't just write some greasy bullshit about, whatever. So, I thought that was interesting that he shared that with me. So that's an important part of the application, too. All right, everybody knows who this is, right? Lawyer, not a lawyer. It's Nelson Mandela. He was a lawyer. See, so what are you guys doing? Nelson Mandela was a lawyer. He went to the University of Fort Hare in South Africa. He became a lawyer in Johannesburg. He even has has a university named after him now, but we all know what a great lawyer and great leader Nelson Mandela was. All right, another great leader. Lawyer, not a lawyer.
Lawyer.
He was a lawyer too. What are you doing with your life, huh? Why aren't you Gandhi? My mother would say. Why are you doing anything with your life? He actually studied law in England. He went back to India, and then he actually did practice in Bombay, which of course is Mumbai now. He did practice for a while before he became Gandhi. So there's hope. Let's talk about the interview. I do have interview questions and my interview notes in the materials. Check these.
9:25.
All right, thanks. And again, I'm happy to stay after as long as anybody wants to chat. Do a mock interview, all right? Once you find out you have an interview, do a mock interview with colleagues and friends and, people, maybe your supervisor, just people with more experience that can help you with a mock interview. If you have friends on the bench, they're usually more than willing to help do a mock interview with you because someone did a mock interview for them. So do a mock interview. It helps so much to do that mock interview. Obviously dress very, very conservatively for your interview. It might be in person or virtual. My first interview was virtual, but it was also still during COVID. Sometimes they give you a choice now. Do you want it virtual or do you want it in person? Opt for in person, okay? The list of possible questions is in the course material. And, talk to friends who've been recently appointed about their experience going through the process. These were some of the suggestions that my friends and colleagues who are on the bench offered to me. If they say, tell us about yourself, make it very, very personal, be competent and happy. Don't think, just have a conversation, and don't say anything stupid, which was good advice for me. Why do you want to be on the bench? Stephen?
Back to the previous slide, do you want to ask questions after your interview to express interest? Because I've always done that these past interviews that I've had.
My experience was they didn't ask me to ask questions.
Mm-hmm.
And they had to interview 10 other people. So I would say, at least my experience was, they did not say, do you have any questions? But that is always a good general rule. If they do ask, have some prepared. They'll ask you why you want to be on the bench. I used words like empathy, compassion, love of the law, just kind of pick a theme. Again, these were suggestions that I had. Pick a theme, you're patient, you have empathy, you believe in the rule of law. That's a big one. They'll ask you, can you follow the law? Say yes. You love, don't use the word challenges. Say you love people, you love helping people. This is, for me, I said, this is the next phase of my life, my career. Be definitive and assertive. And that you kiss their butts, right? Everybody loves a little stroking. I really want to join the most outstanding team of judicial officers anywhere in the country.
Except for the ones you previously said.
They knew you won't going in. I will say this, they knew me going in because I've worked for the county for a really, really long time. I never thought I'd be appointed. I mean, truly. So you just never know. And like I said, I had the advantage. Everybody on the panel knew me, knew all the judges.
What's wrong
And not
with-
necessarily in a good way. I'm just saying they were familiar with me. Yeah.
What's wrong with challenges?
I don't know. These are just ideas and suggestions that was thrown out to me from a friend of mine on the bench. They said, it's just overused, don't use it. If it's comfortable for you to use that word, these are just suggestions and ideas.
I mean, just in terms of themes, I think the suggestion is you want to avoid some platitudes, right? But how do you make yourself stand? Well, I guess you're about to get into it, but how do you make yourself stand out? Do you want to just make them remember you, or is there some certain theme that you think you should strike in the interview?
Great question. You've already been thoroughly vetted by the time you're being interviewed. They've already talked to all your references. They've already spoken to people that know you, people who you've appeared in front of. So they already have a pretty good feel. If you've been selected for an interview, they pretty much already know who you are. They just want to, see you, smell you, hear you. But to answer your question, you have a mastery of an area. I handled mental health court for 8 years. My last 8 years at the legal defender's office, I did all the Rule 11s and all the civil commitment appeals. So I had heavy expertise in a particular area. So if you have that might make you stand out. I was the go-to person at the legal defender's office for mental health for a number of years. So I used that to stand out. And so I could say, I'm really good with people. I'm really patient because I've worked with the most difficult, perhaps the most difficult population, not just in the legal world, but also in our society. And I'm good at it, and I have the patience and understanding. So I was able to use that. So if you have something like that, an area of expertise, definitely use it. Now, I think just as a public defender, you're already going to be good with people. You're already going to be very patient. You're already going to have all the great skills. But not everybody appreciates that experience. Not everybody appreciates that. But if you can set yourself out differently in some way, it's a good idea, isn't it?
So I was told instead of just having mastered one area, they want to see you well rounded in prosecution, defense, or other areas of that.
There's no magic formula. I don't see how you can be a good lawyer and do all those things. Maybe you had a little prosecution experience the first couple years right out of school, and then you went into the defense or something. You can use that. You can say that, but I wouldn't gear my career towards that necessarily. I would say solid experience is more important than lots of varied experience. All right, I gotta make sure people in front of me are heard and let them vent, and they'll ask you, how do you handle a difficult litigant, which was your question. You already know how to handle a difficult litigant. It's just times 1,000 when you're in court. I would let them, but if you're going to answer the question, let them vent. Give them a minute to vent. If they, give them a warning if they start to get out of control. If they don't listen to the warning, you signal the deputy. You get good very quickly at dealing with difficult people because you have to. You learn by doing in this job for a lot of things. They might ask you about how do you handle pro se litigant? I think I got that question. How do you handle pro se litigant? Well, you have to be patient, you have to be fair, you have to be professional. You have to probably redirect them, especially if it's family court. Show empathy, but maintain control of your courtroom. I'm up for the challenge. So there's the word challenge. I'm ready with the law. I don't know what I meant. Again, these are my notes that people gave me suggestions for. I'm up to the task. They might ask you about a situation that you handled really well. So think about that in advance. Did you have a high-profile case that was very stressful? I really lucked out when I had my interview with the committee. Judge Kramer in Maricopa County was on the committee, and I had an extremely high-profile case with Judge Kramer. And so we kind of laughed about it. I said, Judge Kramer knows exactly what I'm going to say. And fortunately, I found out years later that he really respected me after that trial. I thought it was a total shit show. But I heard him in a candid conversation one time telling, if he didn't know that I had heard, that he thought I handled a difficult case very well, that I handled a difficult client very well, and that I should be on the bench. He said this years before I actually interviewed for the job. So I got lucky, but think of something really extraordinary that you did, a particularly difficult case, or something that you handled, and you handled it well, and how you handled it well. They'll ask you, how do you handle an unruly defendant? There is actually a rule. Review the rule before you have the interview if you're not familiar with it. It's Rule 9.2. It's very specific about how the court is to act when there is an unruly defendant. So it says the court has to give them a warning. This is in case law too. Give the defendant a warning if you don't settle down, I wanna hear you, I wanna hear everything you have to say, you have a very good lawyer, but, we have to move on. Give them a minute to vent, and then give them a warning again. I will remove you from the courtroom if I have to, but I don't want to. We'll continue without you, but I'd rather you be here. And then, often, of course, sometimes they continue to act up, and then you have the deputy escort them out, and then you say, you can come back if you can behave, and this is all in the rule, okay? And speak to your attorney. And sometimes I would do that. I would just, if someone got a little on my hand, I would say, all right, take a moment. I want you to talk to your lawyer. Now, the lawyers weren't always thrilled with me when I did that, but I would say, I want you to talk to your lawyer a little bit more, okay? So go in the back, talk to your lawyer a little bit more, and then you can come back. But I really need you to be calm. But parenting also is good training for this job. Stroke the egos of the people you're interviewing with a little bit, be concise. They probably have 10 minutes or maybe 20 minutes scheduled for your interview. So make sure you know what you want to say and then say it. They might ask you, why should we pick you over the others? My favorite is, can you follow the law? Will you follow the law if we appoint you to the bench? Say yes. And of course, you have to take people into custody sometimes, and that's hard. All right, lawyer, not a lawyer.
Lawyer.
Who is that?
Augustus.
Nope, but you have the right sort of.
Marcus Aurelius.
Huh?
Marcus Aurelius.
No, you're close.
One of the emperors.
Yes. And he was a lawyer. It's Julius Caesar. And he was a lawyer, and which surprised me. I didn't know that. I don't know how they know that, but apparently he was a prosecutor, which is very funny. Okay. Thank you, Wikipedia. Okay. How about this guy?
Teddy Roosevelt.
Yes, Teddy Roosevelt. Lawyer, not a lawyer.
He's a rough rider.
He was a rough rider. Lawyer, not a lawyer. Lawyer. Okay.
Somebody had to mention.
He was not a lawyer. Teddy Roosevelt was not a lawyer. He did go to law school, but he did not graduate because he found the law unappealing. There are when I did the research for this, we've had 32 presidents that were lawyers. Wow. 32 were lawyers. He was not one of them, and obviously the current one is not a lawyer. Okay, so you've done the interview, you've done everything, and now you just have to wait, and it's really stressful, and you have to just focus on practice and not think about it. And I submitted my application in November. I didn't take the bench until July of the following year. So it's a really long process, and you just have to roll with that. Just keep doing what you're doing the good work that you're doing, and eventually you get the call. And then you get the call. It's very exciting when you finally get the call. And they will call on a restricted, from the government phone, restricted or unknown phone. So answer those calls while you're waiting. You've been appointed, you're just waiting to take the bench in 2 weeks or 3 weeks or whatever. Great idea to review the Arizona Code of Judicial Conduct. There are lots of special rules that judges have that I wasn't aware of, different from lawyers. The code is in your materials, the full code. It's about 30 pages long. Talk to the jail you're going to be replacing and go sit in the courtroom and watch. All right, it's 4th of July, so I included this gentleman. Anybody know this?
Alexander Hamilton.
No. But yes. Who said Francis Scott Key? Yeah, it is. It's Francis Scott Key. Was he a lawyer or not a lawyer?
Yes.
He was. Francis Scott Key was a lawyer. And of course, he practiced law in Washington, D.C., and he wrote the Star-Spangled Banner in 1814 after the British American War of 1812. The War of 1812. Yes. All right. How about this handsome guy? Lawyer, not a lawyer. Oh, come on. Somebody knows who this is.
Somebody from the 70s.
It's Julio Iglesias, and he's a lawyer. Yeah, Julio Iglesias is a lawyer. He's still alive. He's in his 80s. Very famous singer. He went to law school in Madrid, and he also was a professional soccer player. And then he got hurt, and ended his career in soccer, and so he became a very, very famous singer. Okay, so becoming a judicial officer, you are finally on the bench. So sometimes they just throw you in there, and you gotta learn really fast what to do and how to do it. There are some training opportunities. You'll have to do COJET and not CLE, and the court provides, what's nice now is they provide a lot of online COJET, so like during your lunch hour, you can watch some COJET training, and it's 15 hours, just like for lawyers. They have a special judicial orientation that's 2 weeks over the course of the year. So they do a week in March and a week in September, and you go to judicial orientation. There's Judicial Education Day, which is a retreat 1 day a year where all the judges get together, and mainly to get COJET credit, but there's usually a topic of the day. And there's the Judicial Conference, just like we have our conferences, and there is rotation training. So there are a variety of trainings that are set up for you, but depending on when you're appointed to the bench, I was appointed, I started the first week of August. I didn't have orientation until mid-September. So for 6 weeks, I had to figure out what the hell I was doing. But I'm a sink or swim kind of person, and I decided I was gonna swim. And so I learned I worked very hard, cry a lot, and got up to speed as quickly as I could. The person ahead of me, whose bench I took over, was not very helpful. And so sometimes they'll be helpful, sometimes they may not be helpful, Nancy. And, but go observe. If you can go and sit in the courtroom and just observe, sit up at the bench with them and observe what they do. 5 minutes, okay. Off the bench, I know everybody wanted to hear about this. So you're dealing with a lot of bureaucrats in court admin that really don't understand what you do. They don't have law degrees. They might have a master's in business or something like that, but they treat the court as a business. And all they know is we have this many cases, we have to process this many cases in this amount of time, and we have to hire and fire people and move parts around. It's very frustrating. It was very frustrating for me. I don't deal well with bureaucracy. I don't like rules for rules' sake. Some of the stuff is counterintuitive to the law and to things that we know to be true. Like I said, for me, the most important thing was signing those release orders. If a release order came in, I didn't care if it was 5 o'clock on Friday, which it often was. I was going to be there to sign a release order because I didn't want it on my head that someone spent a weekend in jail, illegally, and unnecessarily. And I fought all the time with this. If my JA was out for whatever reason, one of them was out a lot, it might be sitting in her work queue, and I had no idea that it was there. So I trained the probation officers. Again, this was unique to my court. I trained the probation officers, and you can train the lawyers that appear regularly in your court. If you have a release order, bring it to me. Just walk it over to me. I will sign it. Okay? Don't file it. It'll get lost somewhere. For me, again, that was the most important thing, and I felt like that was my duty to handle that. It will be something else depending on what your bench assignment is, but you need to train the employees and sometimes the lawyers. I used to have lawyers email me directly and eliminate the middleman, because if they emailed my JA, half the time my JA was out sick, so I wouldn't get the information that I needed to get to be prompt with rulings. My lawyers knew that they could email me directly, as long as they CC'd the state, of course. And the state loved it too, because they got their copy. You have to file a monthly judicial certification under this statute, where you sign, and this surprised me. Judges let motions sit forever and ever. It's in the Constitution, as well as statute, that you cannot let a matter sit on your desk more than 60 days. And you have to sign a certification to that effect every month. I thought that was hilarious because, we all know judges who shit their ass. But you do have to, so that's part of the paperwork, and then you also have to file an annual financial disclosure statement under this statute. It is extremely comprehensive, and even if you're a commissioner, you have to do this, and they ask you everything about your finances. So, if you don't like that, then maybe you don't want to go on the bench. That is a legal requirement. get judicial complaints. Oh, here's what, it's just like a bar complaint. It says personal and confidential on the, and it looks just like a bar complaint. It's usually handwritten by someone you've sent to prison. And, you know, it's no big deal, because everybody gets them. And they're usually not of any substance. The letter from the Judicial Commission, it's just like the bar. We got a complaint, we've reviewed it, there's nothing here, it's been dismissed. And that's the first time you find out about it. The first one's stressful though, right? The first one's stressful. You know, so it looks like this. You can't even read what the hell you did to the guy, right? So that's what it looks like. I don't know, you know, I revoked his probation or whatever it is, ninth probation hearing or whatever, his ninth violation. But it is, you know, you have to deal with it. You don't have to do anything if it's dismissed. They just, like I said, sometimes the first time you find out about it is when you get the letter. During my time on the bench, we had the resource allocation study. We had to keep a timesheet for 2 months describing everything we did throughout the day. Because somebody decided that this was a good idea to make sure that we have enough commissioners and judges in the various areas, yes.
Is that why they deleted the 2 criminal divisions?
Yes.
Oh my God.
So not only do you have your duties on the bench, your duties off the bench, your sworn duties, right? You have this bullshit to deal with. I'm glad George is gone. You have this bullshit to deal with. So you have to fill out the time, and it was all online, but you have to go and you have to learn to get to do this software training for the resource allocation study. And then, so you had to learn how to do the software, and then it was, I don't know, a month, 3 weeks, I don't know how long we had to do it, but every day you had to go in and fill out your little time sheet. You know, I was on the bench this many hours, I spent this many hours reading motions, you know. But somebody in admin decided this was a good idea, and it resulted in, you know, moving some parts around. It's a bitch getting vacation time. If you're a commissioner, you have to beg, because nobody wants to cover your calendar. Depending on which bench you're assigned to, if it's criminal, you're signing warrants, you're signing orders. Of course, every area of law has motions, you've got pro per motions. You have to figure out who your friends are. It's very political. Not everybody's your friend. I will say this, I'm so happy to be back in front of the defense bar because we're so collegiate. And it's not like that on the bench. That was not my experience at all on the bench. So treasure your friends. You can find colleagues that can guide you and mentor you, but it's not easy. You know, finances are involved, you know, research, retirement plans. If you're already in ASRS, stay on ASRS, they give you an option to change it to whatever the judges are on that I don't really understand. But ASRS is the golden ticket. Stay on it, especially if you've been on it a long time. This is what Superior Court judges make right now. This is what commissioners make right now.
Yeah,
it's actually higher.
Commissioners are 171 now. I don't know what that is.
Oh, it's higher now?
Oh, yeah.
Just since the first of the year?
Yeah, I think
Okay.
it's
Under 200.
Oh, okay. All right, the commissioners always make 90% of what the judges make. So the judge's salary is set by the legislature. The commissioner's salary is set by the county board of supervisors. All right, thanks for coming. I know I'm running long. You're expected to be in leadership. You're expected to cover critical coverage calendar. That is like, probation court and other arraignment courts. They have a calendar of people who are assigned on certain days to do those. You're expected to do that, even if you're very busy with your own calendar. You get appointed to committees by the presiding judge on things you don't really want to do, but you can't say no, because you serve at the pleasure of the presiding judge, and you don't want to piss anybody off. And you're expected to do public service. There's fun stuff, ceremonial duties. You know, somebody might ask you to marry them. That's kind of fun, marrying friends. The investitures are fun. All the judges put on their robes and parade into the board of supervisors board of auditorium. That part's kind of nice, kind of fun. The court does provide a privacy protection program. They sign you up if you ask for delete me. Is that what it's called, Steve? the internet program that searches the dark web for your information and deletes it. So the court does sign you up for that for free. So you know, you can get your personal information redacted, your address, and all of that. And they do a whole orientation on security. You know, this is some of the stuff I dealt with: equipment failures, poor circulation. I was in the basement of Central Court Building and practicing at the time. The internet sucked, like cockroaches and rats, a huge caseload. So your experience might vary. If you need to go, I understand. I'm almost done here. You know, again, this was my experience. I had tremendous attention with the probation office. The space we were in was very inefficiently designed. You know, probation was filing PTRs on Prop 200 cases. Like, why are we revoking people on Prop 200 cases? Your experience may vary. Mine was kind of like the Twilight Zone. And I'll leave you with a laugh. This is the actual official robing for the Supreme Court of Canada. I thought it looked like kind of Santa Claus to me. So I thought it was very funny. But this is actually what the Supreme Court in Canada wears.